Welcome everyone to Politically High Tech. And I have a very, very great recurring guest. For those of you who pay attention, can you guess who it is? Nah, I mean, you could cheat through the description. I don't care. I'm not going to quiz you, but I'm going to assume you cheated because I'm paranoid, I'm cynical, and I don't trust you. But this one here, she is addresses something that's very important and very fundamental that we forget as a very distracted, chaotic, I would just say irrationally confrontational society. Okay. It's just getting, I would just say it's getting worse on the national level. I would say if you want to say it's getting better, you got to go to certain communities. You got to dig deeper. The national discourse, it's more terrible than before. It's easy to find clips of politicians of the opposite party arguing like immature children, exploiting the rules, and it's just appalling. And our tax dollars go to these people.
Right.
That's the most offensive part to me. Forget about the name calling and all that. This is truly offensive to me. I don't care your left, right, center, green, rainbow party, communist party. I don't care what party you're in. But I'm going to blame mostly the Republicans, the Democrats, Republicans, because y'all the major parties. Okay. So you're the major parties. I'm going to blame you two more than all the other parties. All right. There you go. Anyways, I'm gonna turn to a big hypocrite if I keep yammering. So I'm just gonna let her. I'm just gonna call her the podcast therapist. I'm just put a nice term. I can say psychoanalyst, but I was gonna say, oh, I gotta be kooky and crazy. Let's welcome her back, and let's see if I get that last name right because I got it wrong the last time. Phyllis Leavitt, right?
You got it right. Phyllis Leavitt.
Yay! What do you want the listeners and the viewers to know about you before we get started?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here to talk with you. I love the topic of, so I'm a therapist. I've been a psychotherapist for my whole career. I'm also an author, but I've worked with families and children and couples and individual adults for many, many years. And I wrote a book recently called America in Therapy, A New Approach to Hope and Healing for a Nation in Crisis, because I really believe that looking seriously at our mental health is the challenge that we face today. And that one of the beauties of looking at what's going on in our country or our personal lives or our communities, schools, businesses, churches, states, larger communities, any organization of people we know from the field of psychology operates on certain kind of family dynamic. And it's either a healthy family dynamic or it's a dysfunctional, unhealthy, and often abusive family dynamic. And so it occurred to me quite a while back that I really needed to take that lens and look at what's going on in our country through that family systems lens so that we can really understand what's going on here in a different way. Because right now we're being conditioned to believe that all of the escalating divisiveness and violence and discrimination and injustice and withholding of resources and the propensity toward war is based on our ideological differences. And from a psychological point of view, we know that's not the case. What we're dealing with is a declining state of our mental health. And the reason very simply why that is so and how we can understand that, anybody can understand it. It's not a deep psychological academic question that we're asking. On a very simple level, mentally healthy people don't want to hurt each other. They don't want to wage war. They don't want to kill anyone. They don't want to starve anyone. They don't want to hate. They're really committed to relationship, to repairing relationship, to listening, to building compassion, to being self-responsible for their own part in any dynamic rather than being focused on blaming other people for the problems that they face. Mentally healthy people are really committed to nonviolent conflict resolution. Are mentally healthy people perfect? No, we're all human. Sometimes we're triggered. Sometimes we get angry. Sometimes we're afraid. Sometimes we're really upset or want to wall off or just blame and target someone. But mentally healthy people have the ability to restrain the worst of their impulses and come back to the table and try to work out their human relations. because they know that actually that makes for a happier life. It makes for greater safety. We come into this world wired for love and belonging. And to the extent that we don't get that, wired for love and safe belonging, let me say, to the extent that we don't get that, we become symptomatic and we act out on ourselves and or other people. So we are actually healthier as a whole nation, as well as individually in our own lives or smaller communities, when we commit ourselves to the repair of relationship and not escalating violence and hatred. And that's really the point of my book. How do we look at ourselves that way, not with blame, shame, or a desire for retribution, but how do we take the healing principles of the best psychotherapy and apply them to our country to really save us from ourselves?
Yeah. Well, this is definitely a more, well, not that the other one was, this is definitely more of a positive led introduction. I would say a little more to pass. It was more like a neutral introduction. So there, that's a little bit different thing. If you want to check the previous episode, listeners and viewers, because I try not to be repetitive unless it's a supremely important point, but I think America's not listening, so I will accept some repetition on some things. Like, we gotta stop the war, and why, let's just use these two countries for example, Israel and Iran, why they act like psychotic fools and just want to bomb each other to oblivion, right? And this is what we're gonna get into, and a couple of other topics, not just the big geopolitical stuff, which that's just a macro symptom of all that, because we got crazy people who are in charge. Just put it simply, okay? That have unhealed wounds
Mm-hmm.
that hasn't been addressed, or they choose to ignore. I don't know what the details. I'm not them. I cannot get in their brain, but something went wrong along the way, and they're in power, and whoop-de-doo.
One of the things you can say from a psychological point of view is that when people are hurt or when they have terrible role models for relationship, and most of us grew up with the role model of someone's right and someone's wrong, someone's good and someone's bad. And the people who believe they're right believe that they have the power and the justification for dominating the people that they believe are bad and wrong. And that whole dynamic, which is a win-lose dynamic, somebody has to win the argument, somebody has to win the war, somebody has to win the trade war, and somebody has to lose. That is actually really needing to be examined and undone. It might have been the way people were for all of human history, but we've reached a tipping point where our ability to dominate other people has put us at risk of mass extinction because we have the kind of nuclear weapons and chemical additives that can destroy our ability to survive on this planet. And we haven't been at that place before. This is a real turning point in human history that I think a lot of people have not really wanted to take in or really even understand, that our ability to try to conquer other people and be right and win puts us all at risk. And so it's time to re-examine the dynamics that we're operating on. And for me, the paradigm shift that we need is a win-win. That means we're committed. And this is what you see in therapy. Like if a couple comes to therapy, yeah, they each come in the door wanting to prove to the therapist that the other person is wrong and they're right. And they want the therapist to side with them. And in some cases, there's things that it's appropriate to say that's not okay. You know, if you're slamming doors or calling names or threatening, those things are not okay. But they're identified not as you're good, you're good or bad or right or wrong, but how can you, if what you really want is to get through to the other person, you're not going to get through to them and get what you want in the relationship if you're behaving in certain ways that are destructive or aggressive or, in some other way hurtful. And so how can you learn to approach your partner in a way that's actually going to give you the love and safe belonging and compassion and being heard that you want? And the underlying principle of that is there's two things. One of them is that a lot of therapy is focused on healing the wounds that you suffered, that we all suffered in some way, that have set us up to have dysfunctional coping mechanisms in a relationship. So sometimes it's really a matter of going back into one's childhood. Maybe there was abuse. Maybe there was neglect. Maybe there was addiction in the family. Maybe a parent left and never came back and there was a grief and loss. Maybe someone died who was really important to you and you never got help for any of those things. And so you survived the best you could given what you had, but maybe it wasn't so great what you developed as a coping mechanism as a child, and you're discovering that it's not working in your adulthood. So maybe you became really aggressive as a child because you felt like you had to defend yourself. Well, that kind of aggression is probably not working in your current marriage or with your children or with your boss or with your employees. So through no fault of your own, you did the best you could with what you had, but what you have isn't working. And just like we need to look at ourselves in therapy, for our own well-being and the well-being of our relationships and our families, we need to do that as a country. Maybe what we learned when we came here and we, dominated the Native Americans and tried to wipe them out and took slaves. Maybe we thought that was okay to do, but is it working? Is it right? Is it producing effects that are boomeranging back and hurting us and millions of people right now? Can we be responsible for that and change our ways without, collapsing into deep shame, but to really just be accountable? And these are some of the things you learn in therapy. How do you be accountable and take responsibility for yourself? That's really that's the key. And a lot of that work, as I said, I'll just repeat that, is based in healing your own wounds. We all came by our dysfunction, understandably. And as adults, we have a responsibility to rework it if it's harming us or other people.
I know there's a certain quote I could work here. I'm going to butcher it, but I'm going to say it anyways. I think, right, like what you said, because I would say sometimes, I'm just going to say this as best as I can, before you even chime in. Sometimes the solutions we use, and since we don't know any other way, it's really effective the short term. Maybe the person had to be aggressive because they had really got to survive. It was life or death. But since we didn't learn any other mode, we're fixated, we're stuck in it, and then it becomes a toxic trait. And you argue with the friend or the coworker, the boss, the wife if you have, or husband, whoever. You just become so confrontational because you just think everyone is out to get you. Right. Yeah, it served you well in situations maybe one or two, but three and on, it's a big problem. You see, this is a good, great, classic example when a solution becomes a problem.
And I think you described our defense structure very well, because if you're a child, maybe being aggressive is the only way you know how to protect yourself, or maybe shutting down and isolating is the only way you knew how to protect yourself, or maybe it was becoming a people pleaser, or maybe it was becoming driven and to success and feeling like you have to be a workaholic to be noticed or to achieve in the world. There's lots of ways that people decided to survive that don't serve them, and they really don't serve relationship in their adult life. And that's part of the difficulty, is that we get so invested in our defenses that we lose the sense of connection to other people. And we need that sense of connection to other people. And the more we go on in our individual lives and as a society and as a country, damaging our sense of connection to other people or minimizing the value of our connection to other people, which is really being connected to your own humanity, the more we lose that, the easier it is to bomb people or steal from them or dominate them or rape them or put them into some kind of slavery or throw them in jail and throw away the key instead of trying to help them. And so we're really at great risk. Really, the big mental health challenge is that we're losing our connection to our own humanity. And that opens the door to war. And when we open the door to war, we open the door possibly to our own extinction. And the quick thing I just want to say about that is, people come to therapy to get out of the wars they're in their life, the wars with themselves, with their children, with their spouses, with their employers or their employees or their communities. They come to find peace. They come to find reconciliation. They come to find healing. And that gap between what causes so much pain in our own lives and what's now causing inordinate pain on a national and global level. That gap is a mental health issue. It's not an ideological issue.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And listeners and viewers, normally I like to be joking, lighthearted. Are you really getting something out of this? Because this is a problem, and I'm going to throw in even social media. Stick to that because that's more the symptom of our declining mental health and our ability to socialize or even be human. Because I do agree, that's being diminished to some extent incrementally, and even people who are already screwed up exponentially. It's just going downhill. How downhill? Maybe it's like a hill that's not too steep, or just for some people it's really extreme. Just go downhill just like this, so you get a splat. Figuratively speaking, don't take this literally, okay? Because I want you to be safe, believe it or not. So don't take this. So don't take this literally. Let me give two politicians an example where there's toxic communication between these two, and some reason they get publicity, and the cool kids will call it clout. For one political party, I'm going to mention the Republican one first, Audrey Taylor Greene, and then she gets into conflict with the other one for the Democrat, Jasmine Crockett. Every time they both are in their committee meetings, that it's easy for the media to find clips of them being combative and arguing with each other. And my only question to you is, how will you advise them to address one another in a more productive manner?
Well, I think it's interesting, and a lot of people are aware of this. I'm not probably telling you any new news, but it's very striking to me from a mental health perspective that the way a lot of what we see happens in Congress, for instance, or in the news politically, are behaviors that our children would be thrown out of school if they demonstrated in the classroom. So that's another huge gap that we allow and even condone or enjoy or get a kick out of seeing somebody be highly combative and not even try to work things out or listen to each other, when we wouldn't want that with our spouse. We wouldn't want our children to behave that way in school. We wouldn't want our employer to treat us that way on the job. And so we're role modeling things for the whole populace that are dysfunctional, that are sometimes abusive, and that are very, very hurtful. And, the whole world is watching. And children are very impressionable. And when they see people in power and positions of authority behaving in ways that we in our own homes or schools or offices would not allow, then the line between appropriate behavior and inappropriate behavior disappears. And our values get very compromised about what it means to be a citizen, to be part of a community, to be part of a government or a school or a family. So I think it's very dangerous. One of the recommendations that I have, and I know that we're a long way from many of the things that I talk about, but if we don't talk about them, how do we learn them? We might still be a long way from a complete cure for cancer, but if we don't keep trying, we won't find a cure, right? So it's the same with our mental health. We have to keep talking about what is needed. One of the things that we could easily implement in Congress, if we had the will, and that's a big if, would be to have trained facilitators moderating the conversation, not allowing people to act out on one another, not allowing name calling or raised voices or just blame and shame, but actually teaching people the skills for listening, for deep listening, for taking responsibility for themselves, for examining their own motivations and behaviors, for making amends when they misspeak, and for actually seeking resolution. If we had that role modeled in Congress today, we would have a different country. Just that.
A completely different country, would be a far more productive country. And I love what you said. I was about to say blur, but that's even better. Disappear. That's exactly what it is. We gotta use, I say, concise language is more important. That's something that I'm trying to adopt in my mind. Sometimes I use muddled words. I love that you use blur, because blur is ambiguous. You said disappear. That's exactly what it is. Yep, it's gone. It's shattered. And then it's true. Because how you expect citizens to behave And yet this kind of stuff is promoted. And I don't want to just use the two ladies. Let me use the two gentlemen to make gender representation. James Comer, Jamie Raskin. Comer is a Republican, Raskin is a Democrat. They get into their heated arguments too. I don't want to make it seem as only female politicians. No,
Right.
no.
Right. Of course.
So let's just throw in the male example as well. But the essence of the question is still the same because we have so much problems. And you may not be saying something new, but we don't always need new. We're declining so much. I think sometimes we need to mention traditional or tried examples because sometimes we forget who we are. You already said that we lose in our humanity. So sometimes old, traditional, established solutions, I think it's okay. Of course, I think the only judgment we have, if tried, of course, is the effectiveness. Then we could critique it. All right. But we're just, and I'm going to hone in this, but we are just stepping further away from humanity. I have seen it. And, it's sad. I use social media a lot just for information and just get good examples of what I want to talk about. But I don't, or entertainment, but I don't treat it as the most valuable, like a news source. Right. I still disagree with that. Even this is coming from a millennial, by the way. I like to do deeper research, look at articles, and even at times see what TV is saying just to compare how it's reported. Because, social media does clips for sensationalism. That's how I got found by the two ladies, but the TV used more the two gentlemen argument. Whatever. To me, same basic problem. Different people. And I think social media has played a lot to get us more combative, more angry, more irrational, point our own echo chambers and just pretend I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat. If they have a slanted view of attacking you, saying that Phyllis is a communist and now I'm a rabid Republican. Oh, yeah, you see? Yeah, I knew it. That therapist is a communist. To hell with her. Yes. That confirmation. My point is, the confirmation bias is on steroids. Social media has because the algorithm feeds about what you pay attention to, what you enjoy. So you have some influence in that. So to some extent, the algorithm is your responsibility. If you love crazy, combative content, the algorithm is going to give you more.
Right. Well, I think that's part of when, looking at the correlation between an individual family and the family of America. And I call it the family of America because we're operating on family dynamics and a lot of them aren't so healthy. And I just want to plug this in really quickly. There are millions of wonderful people in America doing fabulous things. And I think that there lies some of our hope. There are people, they not necessarily at the top of the news, that you might not see them on social media, but there are people who are going into prisons and helping rehabilitate people and treat them like human beings, help them prepare to be released so that they're a different person when they go back out into society. There are people who are feeding the poor. There are people who are taking care of animals. There are people who are helping people grow gardens in the inner city. There are people doing amazing things. And even if it's not on a large scale, there are people who are just good neighbors, who are good to their children, who make amends when they stray. So I don't want to leave that out. It's not all bad, but what is destructive has a huge influence on the family of America as a whole. And I think so, obviously when you come to therapy, you don't focus on what's working, you focus on what's not working. And so that's a little bit of what we're doing. And I think in the big picture of social media, it's partly our individual responsibility about how we use it and what we expose ourselves to. That's for sure. But in the big picture of the family of America, I think I think this is really the family of the human race, not just America. We have incredible potentials. Some of them are the potentials, to clean up the climate and reduce emissions and build, make better houses of worship or institutions of education. We have incredible potential, but we also have the potential for mass destruction. And I think we have to choose. What do we want to broadcast on social media? What kind of movies do we really want to make? Do we want to make movies about sadistic murderers? Do we want to keep showing clips of dead bodies and people screaming at each other and, dancing in the streets because some city got bombed? Do we really want this to be the food that we take in? because it's all food. It's emotional food, it's mental food, it's psychological food, and for some of us, it's even spiritual food. Is it good for us? Nobody wants to eat physical food that's rotten or contaminated or heavily laced with pesticides. We don't want to consume those things into our body. Could we look at the environment, the emotional, mental, behavioral environment we live in, and together decide, not like censorship, but decide what's good for human beings and do more and more of that. Role model more of that, speak more of that, advocate more of that, vote for more of that.
Oh yes, that's absolutely right. I'm doing my part right now, and I can see the algorithm. That one we have influence over. We consume crazy negative content. It's gonna give you more. Me, I sadly, as to get topics of this podcast, I have to be complicated myself. Okay, I just want to get just the news stuff, but I don't want the ultra violent and all that, because that's not going to serve my purpose, and that's just feeding I'm just going to call it the dark algorithms. Okay, he likes loves violence and craziness. Let's send him more. And then there you go, just more and more clips of that. If I pay attention to more of the positive stuff, and this is a good thing I've been doing, joining organizations to restore conversation. I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to try to take Phyllis's job if you're thinking that. But if you feel so, there's a comment section. Feel free to express yourself. You're entitled to be wrong, but not correct. Okay? That's fine with me. But all of seriousness, I'm part of two organizations. I'm part of Unite New York to have more accessibility to Democrat voting and talk to people. That's more productive. And I'm gonna join even one of the calls, pretty soon. About how we could productively solve. This is more like systemic change. This is not therapy. It's not humanist, all that. But I think this could address some of the human issues. I'll say in a more indirect level, because people don't feel like the government is working. They're hopeless, and they feel like everything is rigged. Everything is for the rich and the powerful. Yeah, the rich and powerful got some control, but they don't have complete control. What's one good example of that? Elon Musk, when he's trying to flip the seat in Wisconsin Supreme Court. Big failure. He threw a lot of money there, still lost. That's just to show you money is not a guaranteed victory. And you know what? I don't care if this is left or right doing it. The Democrats have done similar things too. Thank God. Because if that was the case, we'll be a much more screwed up country than what we are right now. If money was the guaranteed indicator of victory. Does it boost? Does it help? Yes, it does. But it's not the guaranteed indicator of victory. It could be a metric, but it's not the guaranteed victor. So that's why I'm mentioning that as an example. And me, I'm even part of Braver Angels, restoring conversation. I'm independent. People feel kind of comfortable talking to me as an independent. So, some people try to see if I was a left or the right. So, I really can't figure you out. I said, no, because I don't care about partisan loyalty. That's the problem. Partisan loyalty is the problem. There's some things I'm going to agree with Republicans in there. Some things I'm going to agree with the Democrats in. And sometimes I mesh the two together. Let's use immigration. I love the Republicans if they only target at the violent, criminal, migrant only, and it has to be proven. Just that portion. But I also love the Democrat inclusivity of getting people in, increasing the population, even help them get citizenship. If we mesh those two together, that'll be a step in the right direction just to fix this broken immigration system. So I'm in the center. Oh yeah, if the migrant is violent, for example, I'm gonna agree with Republicans. I go case by case. If this migrant is scared, be wrongfully detained, yeah, I'm gonna join the Democrat in that particular case. My point is I don't care about partisan loyalty. If I join either side, I'm missing the point. Far left perspective, keep that border wide open. I'm against that. The far left, I misspoke. The far left perspective, keep that border wide open. I'm against that. The far right perspective is keep that border closed or let certain people in. I said, no, I'm against that too. We have to be a welcoming nation. We have to come with a better system for that. I just don't want, I'm going to sound a little insensitive here. We just don't want people, I don't want people with money, not just people, but I want people who are escaping, their conflict. Let America be a welcoming haven for those people too, those who don't got anything. who got, I don't know, a broken suitcase, ripped up clothes, come to America to find a better life. Okay. And that does contribute to the population growth, because a lot of Americans are not making babies. A lot of statistics will tell you that. And the birth rate is so low that we will hit a decline if we didn't have migrants. So what's my point? They are a need, and we cannot treat them as just a replaceable tool or luxury. We need to fix this. This should be a necessity, this problem, and a priority. That's all I'm going to say about that. I didn't expect to speak that much on that, but I think it needs to be brought across. And this is American therapy, welcoming new people. Can it be complicated? Of course it is. Of course it is. But it's rewarding if we get it right.
Well, I think if I can add one piece to that, and again, this is big picture. There's no easy solution to what I'm going to say, but I think it really needs to be said, not just in America, but worldwide. Why do we have so many immigrants? I think we have to look at that. Why are so many people fleeing their homeland and their home? I wouldn't want to leave my home. I wouldn't want to leave my country. I think so many thousands and thousands of people are fleeing because they don't have food, because they're persecuted for their religion, or because there's a war going on in their country and there's no safe place to be in their home, or there's some kind of invasion going on in their country and it's not safe to be in their home. So the real solution to immigration is to make it safe for people to stay where they are. That's the real solution. And that is a worldwide problem. It's not something that the United States can cure, but certainly we could play a part in that. And we've played a part in disrupting some of the politics and political situations in other countries, or gone after them for their resources and unsettled, the safety and the well-being of the general populace. So we have to take responsibility for that and not just blame people because they're trying to get across the border to a safer place, or a place where they think they might have more food. I think we have to look as really the family of humanity at what we're doing to each other, that there's so many immigrants around the world.
That's a very good point. Now, I'm happy you mentioned that, because, I don't normally think that. I'm just thinking about, migration here as maybe a choice, a bit naive, but you do address the root problem. America has caused, in other developed nations, have caused instability on the more less privileged, less wealthy, less developed nations, because we want to install the leader that suits the American interests, British, or whatever developed country, fill in the blank, interests. And that caused a lot of destabilization. That's why a lot of them, and that's just basic. This is basic. This is not a partisan thing. This is global sociology. This is this is geopolitics 101. Okay. This is, this is very basic stuff. Some of you may say, oh, this is left wing. Oh, read your history. Read recent U.S. history. There's plenty of examples of the U.S. interfering with Latin American countries in particular. Multiple of them. Okay, It's been doing that for centuries.
And something that you said is really important when you said learn our history, because that is a very important part of therapy. We have to know what happened to us. What were the conditions we grew up in our families? What were the values? What were the good things that happened and the strengths we developed? And what were the traumas we survived and suffered that maybe have shaped us in some dysfunctional ways? For me, the best therapy does some investigation of where we came from and how we adapted to what we experienced growing up. And it's not different from a country. We need to know our history. We need to know we're a country of immigrants. My family is all immigrants. And most people are, if they trace themselves back far enough, unless you're a Native American. You came here from somewhere. And why? Certainly there were some people who came to, make their fortune. But there were many people fleeing war and poverty and persecution, and starvation. And we bring that trauma with us. And then we forget that we came from that. And we're looking at other people like, go home. What's wrong with you? when they're fleeing the same thing.
I would like to add a few more things. Even slave trades. Has even moved people, and of course that's by force. But that and the interesting dynamic I've seen, because I know a couple of not documented migrants, and I know those who got their papers. They're even fighting each other. So I did the right thing. You need to get out. This is a couple of migrants arguing with each other. So no, you need to get out. You making me look bad. You making that guy look bad. I've heard all kinds of arguments, and they say, "Oh, no, I think," blah, 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 and a bunch of profanities were thrown in multiple languages and all of that. And also, even migrants are fighting each other. I'll say the documented versus the not documented because of that. And I just say, well, I don't really have a say here. Even though I was born here, but if I trace back, I'm an immigrant too. Spoiler
Right?
alert.
We are. I am
And I'm
too.
sure yeah, yeah, a vast majority of us, I'll say 99.99% of us, unless you have Native American trace roots. But again, we are so mixed. We're I'm sure a few of us got. I know I got Native American some trace in me there, but I'm still a migrant because you know why? Because it takes migrant to make me, and I got mixed with a bunch of people, and here I am. Fast forward, without getting into the details. So
Well,
I'll say the majority of me got migrated here.
right.
Yep.
And I
Go
think,
ahead.
a good analogy for why psychology is so important, why addressing our collective mental health is so important is, you can have a fight about who belongs here and who doesn't, but that's just the surface of the issue. Underneath is why, like I said, why do we have all these people, getting on boats where half of them drown? But it's better to take that chance than stay where they are. Can we even take a minute to imagine what they must be fleeing for them to risk their lives in that way? So I think part of the lens of psychology is when you look at the origins of people's behavior, you can start to grow some compassion. And when you grow some compassion, then you're more likely to want to look for a real solution and not a band-aid or a one size fits all, build a wall or, whatever it is. So those are not solutions.
No, they're not. And look, I'm going to say this again. I've said this several times. Our immigration system is broken. Capitalize that word. Broken. And it's been like that. Of course, even if we adjust that, that's only one part of the problem.
Right.
So just to, not to actually just to even make it congruent with your point, because you already set the root cause. The instability in their homeland. Sometimes it's caused by not just developed nations. Sometimes it's even within the countries. But that's getting too deep to the histories of all that. But generally speaking, even sometimes it's intra-conflict within certain nations. But let's just be honest, that's a good chunk of it has to do with developed nations putting their foothold and just picking leaders that support their interests as opposed to the native populace interests, and that causes instability. I need to emphasize that. And I'll say a good country that continues to have instability, even intra to some degree, even though we keep meddling with it. I would say Haiti is a very good example of massive instability, and a lot of them had to come here not too long ago. And I'm not surprised that's continuing. Well, actually, I'll say that's been less because we have a current leadership who is about closing the darn border. So the migrants are, generally speaking, I can't speak for every single one of them, are less encouraged to come here because they're watching too. They got access to smartphones. They may not come from the most rich country, but I could tell you one thing: migrants are resourceful. They are resourceful with little they have, generally speaking. And sadly, they take these risks to come. Like I said, the boat, sometimes long walks to uninhabitable places like a desert. Okay. I mean, I was watching it, this is, of course, I was looking about how much migrants is coming in during Biden's presidency. I'm not a big fan of both of the camps. Like I said, I'm an eye the other day, but I've seen so many of them come in, some drown in the boats, some were even killed because they encountered the wrong person, and some even relied on smugglers to get in. I mean, what are they supposed to do? Imagine just having what? Only just one set of clothes. Some have children. Some even Get your children so the children can make it there, and some parents even sacrifice their lives, which is, I can't imagine that. I just can't fathom that. So much, putting so much danger, forget so much danger in so many levels. Look, most of us Americans can't even comprehend that because we haven't been through, I haven't been through that. So I'm not going to pretend to fully understand. But just seeing that, I'm just shocked what they have to go through. Some get shot and killed along the way. You know, there's so much. And then those who get here, are they really fortunate? Maybe. But, and then sadly, but they lost so much along the way. So should they have others? And some lost their friends. It's sad. It's just really, really sad. And we need to come up with a better way and just, and this is my big criticism to the United States. Just stop. Just become more of a partner, and then our global standing will be so much better. Do more partnerships instead of, I'm going to use this word, authoritarianism or dictator or dictatorship by installing someone who's just going to support the U.S. This is why, to some degree, a lot of countries don't even like us. They don't want to trust us because of that. I'm not saying they're right, too. They got their own set of issues. But I'm only speaking to America. I want America to be held accountable so we could be, hopefully, because we're losing our standing in the global stage on some of the metrics. I got to be honest. I love America, but I'm also honest as well. I'm a tough lover. We're losing our standing in some stations. You already mentioned trade wars. That damaged relations with a lot of countries. Almost across the board. So they go. That's more my criticism of Trump now. Like Biden, I think open border. I'm against that. Trump with the trade war, I'm definitely against that. I think that was unnecessary chaos. Maybe except for a few countries I would agree with, but generally speaking, to do that with Canada, that's our good neighbor. How we got stable relations with them. And U.S. always have a complicated relationship with Mexico. So I'm not sure that was going to be improved or not. I didn't expect anything out of that, but we damaged relations with Canada. So we had a stable standing, but even the stupid trade war. But this is what, led by people who are, how can I put this delicately? They got wounds that haven't been addressed. I'm just going to say it like that. I know they come up with nasty names and be super critical, but I'm trying to be a little nice here. I'm trying to be the mature one here and be a little more accountable. Easier said than done, believe me.
And that's where I think psychological understanding really needs to be spread across our whole population. Because one of the things you see being a therapist is that inside the perpetrator is a victim that didn't get healed. For the most part, that's very much true. That inside the people who do the worst things to other people is a hurting part of themselves that is coming out as rage, or that's role modeling the abusive behaviors that they experienced or witnessed themselves. Or they were so deprived of love and safe belonging that the ways they've defended themselves have become aggressive toward other people or hurtful toward other people, or they never internalize the empathy that we need for one another to want to get along, and so they don't have it. And these are psychological, emotional wounds that, sometimes we don't know how to address. But if you take the bully kid on the playground, that's not a happy child. That's a child that's looking for power in an inappropriate way. And the kids that rally around the bully on the playground and support the bully are usually equally disempowered children, or they haven't had clear role models, or they haven't been steered in a different direction. And so what we see on the playground with children, we see on the playground of a country. And if we could just know that, that inside the perpetrator is an unhealed victim. That doesn't mean they get a free pass because they're hurting, but it means we have to direct our resources and our attention and our intelligence toward actually healing our human relations so we don't keep producing perpetrators. That's really what it's about. How do we break this cycle? We don't break it with war. You don't break it with violence. You don't break it with hatred.
Well, let me list the two main enemies of this episode: the military-industrial complex and those who run the prison systems. They say, no. Some of them are going to have a paranoid attitude because they care about profits over people. So if you attack us on that, I'm going to know you either support the prison system or the military-industrial complex. They don't like this conversation. And you know what? So be it. because the way it's running, look, we can't. I think we have a point that we could just, I think, barely keep up with interest payments, and if we just keep adding a little more debt, forget it. The economic collapse is coming. So this current system we have is unsustainable. It needs change as soon as possible. I think addressing these wounds, have less people in prison, we'll definitely do that. And going to wars a heck of a lot less will definitely improve the economy because wars are very expensive. They're just very, very expensive. I'm not an economic genius, but they are very expensive, especially with all these middle people that are with the military industrial complex. They are, whoo, the money they make from these wars are it's just astronomical.
Right.
It is astronomical, and it's wrong because this is a profit of death, suffering, and destruction. Like you said, we got nuclear weapons. If all what 9 countries that own nuclear weapons shoot nuclear weapons around around the globe, we wiped out. We're done. That's it.
Right. So then we have to ask ourselves, why are we putting our tax dollars into the creation of what could destroy us? If somebody was doing that in their home, if they were building a bomb in their basement that could blow the house up, we'd say they were mentally ill. We'd say they need help. They need restraint. They need redirection. They really need something desperately. And yet we're doing that as nations.
Yep. So I think you point out something that's very important. Morale. I think we did. You just point out a double standard on morality in productive citizens. The government acts more like a mad scientist, mentally ill, but yet they expect the populace to be role models. That's a major disconnect right there.
It's a major disconnect. And I think another way of saying that is that we condone things to be done to other people, and especially other people that we never have to interact with, over there or over across the ocean, that we would never want anyone to do to us. And we would be horrified if it was done to us. And yet we allow it, and we even legislate for it.
Yeah, let's just pretend, forget Israel and Iran, for example. Imagine just U.S. and Canada had that kind of conflict. Just let's switch places. Just imagine that. We're shooting bombs at Canada. Canada shoots bombs at us. The death rate would be astronomical. And forget it, the economic interests of both countries will go down the tubes. So yeah, and it'll be a war zone. Have you seen those apocalyptic, those those future movies? So that'll be the aftermath of that. Then we'd be back to more barbaric, savage, tribalistic species that only goes with people that agrees with the ideology. And the other group of people that got a different ideology, well, they're the enemy already. But they got the resources that we want, so they're the enemy because they are the obstacle to our resources. Great. So do we want that? Let's imagine that. U.S. is Israel, Canada is Iran. They do what they've done. They say the ceasefire has happened. I'll see how long that lasts. Especially two countries that hate each other. They're super militant. They can't stand each other. I don't have much hope. But let's just say, trust me, we will not want war. People who cheer for war are psychotic and they've never been in war themselves.
I think that's probably true. And I think a lot of the people that initiate war are not in the war. They don't suffer the consequences of their own decisions.
Yeah. So that's something to think about. Put in the comment section, how will you feel if U.S. and Canada had the same exact conflict as Israel and Iran?
So let me just emphasize. Yeah. Everything we can each do in our own lives. You don't have to have a huge sphere of influence. Most people don't. Most people have their family, their small group of friends around them, maybe their workspace or their church or their school or some organization they belong to. Most people are not on a national level of influence. But whatever your sphere of influence is, we can all make a difference. We can all be more loving. We can all be more kind. We can all be more generous. We can all be more celebratory of our diversity, and we can all be better listeners. We can all be the ones to initiate repairing relationships, making peace, and know that everything we each do does ripple out.
I think that's a very profound message. It's about how minor, your sphere of influence is. That's true. If you change one life, what will you do for this? This is a good comment section activity. What will you do? I don't care how big your influence is. What will you do to do better to prevent war? do conflict resolution, so to speak, no matter
Right.
how minor it
Right.
is.
Right.
I'll be a comment section for you right there. What will you do? If you're brave enough, type it down. And this is one of the cases where I don't mind long and thought out responses.
Yeah, let me share a story because I grew up like most of us with somebody's right and somebody's wrong, and you have to prove your point. Not with violence. I didn't grow up with that, but many people do. But basically, somebody's right, somebody's wrong, and I'm going to hold to my point until you agree with me, and you're probably going to hold to your point until I agree with you. And if you've hurt my feelings or, angered me in some way, then I'm going to make sure that you get what you did that was not good, right? And so when I was a lot younger, I was probably in my early 40s. I was working at an agency, and I had a good friend who worked at the agency. And I don't remember what happened. It was so long ago, but I did something or said something that bothered him. And he asked me if we could have a conversation. We sat down together. He did not attack me. He did not blame me. He did not shame me. He just told me whatever it was that was bothering him. And then he asked me what my take on the situation was. So he presented his point of view, and then he was open to hear whatever my feedback or perception was. And again, I don't remember any of the details. I just remember that I had never had that conversation with anyone in my entire life. And it changed my life. I'll never forget that moment. He was a true friend, and he wanted it to be repaired. And of course, it was in that conversation, whatever it was. It wasn't any major infraction, but he wanted our friendship to be repaired and to be better. And he was committed to that in the conversation he had with me. And so, of course, it brought that out of me. I didn't need to make him wrong or be right. I just wanted to hear him, own whatever it was, and reconnect. And that's what we did. And it really was life-changing to experience that with another human being. And I think many people have never had that experience.
Yeah, to some of you, it may sound so simple.
Right.
But you know what? It's just like she said, a lot of people just, oh, I'm right, you're wrong. If my feelings is hurt, you're extra wrong. I'm going to get you back.
Right. Right.
Because I already feel attacked. That's the normal dynamic of many people. It doesn't matter your skin color, your socioeconomics. It's just we haven't been taught to communicate in a productive manner. It's just as long as I get what I want, that's all I care about.
Right.
If you suffer, that's your problem. As long as I'm good, I don't care how you're doing. I'll probably be blunt about it, probably overly too blunt, but you get the point. If people just want what they want, then they go about their day. Sometimes they don't. So just that. See, he was just trying to understand what went off. He was really looking forward to, not looking forward to. His intent obviously was to repair the relationship, because if it was just let me just give like a normal conversation. I said, "Oh, Phyllis, you know what you said was so stupid." I tell you what, that's so stupid. I don't like you no more. I think you are a sexist because you just attacked all men. I didn't get to hear your point of view and all that. And I don't want to talk to you. I think you're a radical feminist that should no longer exist. I feel straight hurt. I'm on attack mode. I didn't hear everything, but I just heard a little snippet. And I went on attack mode because I'm already feeling offended, even though I'm safe. I mean, objectively speaking, I'm safe, but my feelings were hurt. So I feel like I'm in danger. I perceive danger, even though it's a safe environment. But since I just heard something that triggered me, keyword, right? Instead of just trying to be understanding or get at least the general picture what's going on, I just heard a snippet and I lost it. She said, all men are like dogs, dirty and simple. So what? This belief doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm gonna tell her straight off about and then of course it creates all kinds of problems and dysfunction that could have been easily resolved and avoided. Let's just be honest. A more silly example, I wouldn't get triggered, something like that. My real reaction to that, interesting. Now try to think the whole picture. So did I hear that whole thing? No. You know what I would do? I would just drop it. Because I gotta dig into it, and sometimes I think we gotta be accountable, like you said, to our own reactions and feelings too. Totally. That's just my point. Because we lack accountability. Social media promotes victimhood. Victimhood. It's your fault, never my fault. Oh no, that's sacrilegious. My fault. You crazy? It's your fault. That's sadly the normal dynamic.
Well, one of the teachers that I had in graduate school, and this is probably a well-known statement, I don't know, but when he was talking about couples therapy, and he was talking about, the couples come in, like I said, they want to prove each other wrong but what they really want, they overtly look like they want to prove each other wrong, but really what they really want is to come back into love. They want to come back into feeling good with each other and feeling loved and cared for and safe and cooperative. And he said, what he often says to couples is, do you want to be right or do you want to have a relationship? And I think as a country and as a species, we are really facing that question. Do we want to be right or do we want to actually survive here? Because if we don't have a relationship with one another and it keeps deteriorating, we really are at great risk.
This may sound cheesy or even minor, but you know what? We keep putting this aside. Look what is manifested.
Mm-hmm.
Sociopaths, happy trigger people, combative people, irrational people, closed-minded people who just want to do what they want, self-interest people who just want to look out for themselves. Screw the we, I'm looking out for me.
Yeah, and the we is where we're going. Because I think, in a happy family, for instance, there's a balance between what's good for the family and what's good for each individual. Not what's good for one individual, but what's good for everybody. And I think that's where we're headed in the evolution of our consciousness as a human race, if we're willing to go there. If we get that it's actually a matter of life and death to go there.
Yeah, I think we need to do a national, state, even local campaigns on that, because look, these people, we are paying them through our tax dollars. We need to hold their feet to the fire to be more responsible. Instead of just looking at them as a team sport player or as a, no. You see, that's the problem. We treat politics like it's a team sport or no, that's a problem. That's a problem. Hold them, hold their feet to the fire. Not literally, because that's violent.
Right.
Figuratively speaking, hold them accountable is what I'm really trying to say. And if they're not doing their job, the people need to stop being lazy, and the voter base, you're lazy, especially in the local and state elections. Federal, I would say you put minimum effort, minimum acceptable effort, but we can even do better there. To vote, get your congressperson out. I don't care about Democrat, Republican. I really don't. They're not doing their job. Get them out. Get them out. They're too corrupt. Get them out. Get them out. That's what we could do. Okay. I don't care if it's House Representatives, Senate, local, state races, and especially local and state races, because if you want to just at least try to look out locally, and because state and local laws affect you even more than federal laws. But the voter base just think, just go federal. A lot more to federal. Nope, you got to pay attention to, ideally, you should pay attention to many elections. I know you don't have that kind of time, but you should pay attention more to local and state elections because those laws are going to impact you much quicker and much more profoundly than even federal laws. Yeah, federal laws impact us, but not as much. Local and state laws impact us directly. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say. Just hold your congresspeople to the fire, and if they're not having productive conversations, or they're just doing things for social media clicks, get them out. Stop putting them in office. I don't care what party they're in. Just get them out. So, anything else you want to add before we do the shameless plug-in?
No, that was great. Thank you so much for having me here
No,
to have this conversation.
Oh yeah, no problem. You was great the last time, and I just think we need more of this. I'm just doing my little part to promote more productive, and try to heal this country.
Yeah, exactly.
Show that lovely book. I think you have it. You have it on your, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll move it over. It's America in Therapy. Can you see it better now?
Yeah, I can see it better.
Here, I'll just hold it here. It's America in Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis. It's available from all major booksellers. You can get it in paperback. You can get it in Kindle. You can visit my website and see some other offerings that I have and read more about what's in the book. You can contact me. You can get on my mailing list and get my newsletters. I'm on all the social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. So you can follow me and just, I try to write really timely messages in a concise way to update some of the things that I'm talking about in my book. I've just created a whole course based on my book that you can use to apply in your own life. And that's part of a book funnel that you can access on my website soon. I don't think it's on there right now, but it will be. And yeah, and just you can just contact me on my website if you have any other questions. And again, thank you so much for having me. I just really appreciate being here and having this conversation with you today. And thank you for the great work you're doing to do each of us trying to do our part to heal this country and bring us back together in some kind of loving cooperation.
Yeah, that was a big gap for me. I said, wait a minute, I'll talk about it, but I'm not doing the action. See, self-reflection does work. Aha. So I joined these organizations. Braver Angels, just try to get people together, or at least have a constructive disagreement, but still maintain, conversations and all that, and learn from each other. That's
Right.
they're not about changing minds. They're just trying to find what's the collective good.
Right.
That's Braver Angels, and then of course Unite NY is more about changing election laws in a state level. Especially me as an independent, I have a problem that I cannot vote in a primary.
Right.
So
I
I missed
know.
out. I missed out on the primary, but I could vote in a general election. So that needs to change for independence. I'll be either a Democrat or Republican. So I'm not with either of those two foolish parties that are causing this, this damage, this toxicity, if you will. That's what I'm going to say about that. I'll put those links in the description. But Unite NY, you have to be a New York resident. But Braver Angels is nationwide. They have charters in almost 50 states. Started not that long. I think they're about to hit their 10th year pretty soon. It's growing. It's growing because more people want to have conversations. So that's the positive work.
That's
the one
right.
that the news, even the social medias don't want to cover. Well, social media, you got algorithms. So watch positive stuff. Cable TV, well, flip the channels, okay? Flip the channels to something more positive, because that population is still significant right now. That's more the boomer and the Gen X, and even certain millennials that want to, I don't know, act quote unquote elderly. I don't get it. Whatever. Me, I just do a fine balance. Because I need to know what's going on, and so I'm just trying to do the action. Unlike some people it's easy to talk. You gotta do the action as well. I could say all these good things, but if you catch me outside punching someone, I'm a hypocrite. I'm exposed, right? So I try to listen to this host. He just knocked the guy out. You'll be right. I will argue with you, but you're correct. I start giving awards for shortest intro, best shameless plugins. So I gotta start coming with awards. I don't know. I'm gonna do that next season. Make it official. Maybe I should do that. Make it more fun. It's probably guest oriented at this point, but whatever. All right, enough of my crazy yammering. Shameless plug-in for my show. So if you have extra cash, you don't know what to do, send it to this guy right here. $3 a month. You have access to my old, embarrassing, prototype, unfiltered podcast where I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Okay? You want to make fun of me, get audio clips of me, go right ahead. Do that, whatever. Or you're gonna start getting exclusive content in the future. I haven't thought about that yet. What exclusive content will that be like? I don't want something that has to be something like real specific, real, something that I think that's exclusive appropriate. But so far, yeah, you will unlock the first 140 episodes. And this is before I started doing video. Simpler times. I used to be locked up, cooped up because of the pandemic. But that's all you're going to get so far. And then there's higher tiers, and you already have your own emotes to support. And that's all you get. And you get a shout out. Now, that'll be shout outs. That's base tier, low tier stuff. But I gotta find some good content for the exclusive people, like the real dedicated, the real. I gotta find something appropriate. I was good. So, and for the normal YouTube Rumble stuff, like, comment, subscribe, share to people who needs to hear this. And for the Apple podcast listeners, I don't care about you, Spotify. So if you leave the review there, I'm ignoring you. Leave a constructive review. It could be what you don't like about it or what you like about it. Be specific. What made the episode great? What made it not so great? And just rate the stars based on that critique. It's a 4-star, 5-star. I already got 1 star from Invisible Hater. So at least I got some authenticity there. Thank you. But I do pay attention more to constructive, criticism and even praise. Don't just say I'm great or I suck. Just be specific. Why was it great? Why wasn't bad? That I'll pay attention to. So, and join Podmatch as well. I'll give you a unique link as well. It's a great tool. If you hate the back and forth chain emails, I've done it with some guests. I didn't shame them. Some turn to be great and some turn out to be crap. But the chain emails get annoying to me, and sometimes I don't have time to sift through all of that. Podmatch is a great way for you to be organized. And you can even try it for free. So there you go. If you end up hating the product, you can just leave. Give it a shot. Okay? If you end up loving it, you want more features, put your money where your mouth is. That's all I can say about that. So, all right. Once you have reached the end of this visual or audio journey, you have a blessed day, afternoon, or night.